Welcome to Curious Minnesota Live. We're recording from the beautiful trailhead at Theodore Wirth Park in Minneapolis today at the second annual Strib Unbound Festival. So thanks to everybody for being here. And if there's any new listeners out there, on Curious Minnesota, we work to answer your questions about the people, places, and culture of Minnesota. And for this event, we asked our listeners to tell us what they've been wondering about the great outdoors in this state. And we got a question from an angler whose name is Nathan Stenell, and he grew up fishing on Lake of the Woods up in northern Minnesota. And the lake is known as the walleye capital of the world, but Nathan, he remembers reeling in something else, clumps of weeds. I'm sure this might have happened to you. And Nathan and his family would always joke that that was their salad that they were going to have with their fish dinner later. And they didn't actually try it, but Nathan, he now lives in Thailand, and he enjoys seaweed snacks, so he's been wondering, are any of Minnesota's native aquatic plants truly edible? I asked food reporter Sharyn Jackson to look into this one. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being here, Sharyn.
You're welcome.
And I would say I'm a fan of foraging, but when I saw Nathan's question, I was like, this is really getting into the weeds. I love his impulse, though, because I never have wondered whether I could eat that sort of yucky, slimy-looking thing that comes up at the end of the hook. But Sharyn, where did you go to find some answers on this?
Yeah, well, I think you're not alone in being among the people who never thought about eating this stuff. But I went and talked to 4 foraging experts. Sam Thayer, he's kind of the foremost expert around these parts for wild edible plants and kind of is the author of like the guide that teaches people about foraging and what's safe to eat. I spoke with Linda Black Elk, who's an ethnobotanist and an educator and a food sovereignty advocate. Alan Burgo, who's a chef, he calls himself the forager chef, and he's won a James Beard Award for his show, The Wild Harvest. And Maria Westerly, who's a local forager who teaches classes in foraging. You know, I thought they'd all kind of bring a different mix of information to this question, but interestingly, they all kind of said the same thing, which is, yeah, there's stuff in the lake that you could eat, but why would you want to?
I love that. You cast a wide net. But what were some of the things that they mentioned that you could actually eat if you were so inclined?
There are things that grow in the lake that, yes, technically you could eat because they're not toxic. But would you eat it? No, they're not food. They won't hurt you, but there's not really a tradition around eating a lot of these things. And the reason why is, well, there's a few reasons. I mean, first and foremost, the taste of the food, right? Like, this is not salt water, so you're not getting that salty seaweed snack like you might see at, we buy packs of them at Trader Joe's all the time, and they're really yummy. Yeah. These are not going to taste that way, even if they were totally, good for you. And another issue is like the texture. Like there's a lot of really slimy stuff. There's a lot of stuff that has things growing on it, snail larvae and like other kinds of microorganisms, and just so like the feeling, the stuff that's on them, there's toxins, and some of it's just kind of hard to get too. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that it's not edible. You could eat some of the things in the water. So some of the stuff that they brought up, and we're talking about submerged plants, so things that don't come up out of the lake but are underneath. So water celery is one. It's also known as eelgrass, and it's kind of these long green ribbons of leaves. They're actually pretty popular to eat in Eastern Asia, like chopped up and added to soups, but just not as common here. Water shield, they look almost like these tiny lily pads, or like the smallest lily pads. They have like a kind of a jelly undercoating. So,
sorry.
But you could put them in soups or stir fries. Mm-hmm. Another thing that people brought up was filamentous algae. So when we're talking about algae, there's some very toxic algae, blue-green algae. You don't want to eat that. And that's the stuff that's just kind of like floating all over the lake. Yeah. But among that is this filamentous algae. Linda Black Elk described it as it's kind of almost like seaweed salad, and it can be really delicious. But you gotta make sure you're getting the right algae. So one way to know is like if you dragged a stick through the water and you lifted it up, if it hung off the stick, kind of like spaghetti, that's the stuff that's okay. But anything that falls back into the water, like the oozy stuff, you definitely don't want to eat that. And they live and mingle together, so you really want to beware about that. There's also there's some tubers, pondweed tubers that are there. Water milfoil is a really common one that you would pull up maybe while you're fishing. It's kind of got feathery leaves on it. None of the people I spoke to have ever actually eaten it. And it's rumored to have these tubers that are way down below, but no one's really located them yet to eat.
Yeah.
So, could you eat this stuff?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And are there dangers? I mean, avoiding toxic algae obviously is a danger, but are there other reasons that maybe it's not the best idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's parasites, bacteria, the toxic algae. You want to make sure you're with someone who really knows what you're looking at here, so you don't want to accidentally, misidentify something and eat something toxic. One of the folks I talked to brought up water hemlock, which looks a lot like some other tubers, I believe, but would be deadly to eat, and those grow around the lake.
Wow.
So you'd want to watch out for that. And also just consider the water quality, the pollution these days and runoffs and contamination in the water. Basically, anything you get out of the water, you probably want to cook if you're going to try it. One of the folks I spoke to, she was like, yeah, I wouldn't make a salad. So definitely nothing raw.
Got it. All right. So this isn't super promising, but I'd like to imagine if you kind of zoom out a little bit, there is a feast out there and actually some of our most treasured Minnesota foods, right? That growing around a lake.
Absolutely. And again, what I was told is that the place to look for food is kind of where two different worlds meet. So where the water and the land meet. That's where you're going to find amazing food growing. And that's one of the reasons, too, why foragers don't really look in the lake, because there is such an abundance of stuff growing around the lake that, they're like, we don't need to look further than that. What Sam Thayer called the Big Four.
Yeah, tell us, what are the Big Four? I'm curious.
The Big Four, and there's so many more than that, but obviously number one, the iconic wild rice. That is the number one aquatic plant, basically, that grows here in Minnesota that you would eat. Another one would be wapato, which has a bunch of different names, actually. One of them, which I really like, is rat potato.
Huh.
Another one, it's also known as Katniss. So Katniss Everdeen from
wow.
Hunger Games got her name from wapato. But these are tubers that grow way down deep in the mud. And Alan Burgo and Linda Black Elk, they were telling me they go out and harvest these. And Alan said he's out there shoulder deep in mud.
Oh, wow.
Pulling these things up, but that they're delicious. You can grate them and make hash browns, and it's just a great, really, really great tuber. Lotus is another one, which is the largest flowering plant in Minnesota, I found out, and you can eat the roots and the seeds and, slice them, and pretty good in a lot of different cuisines. Mm-hmm. River bulrush was another one, which is reeds. So those were the big four that Sam mentioned. And then Alan Burgo talked a lot about cattails. Actually, everybody talked about cattails. It sounds to me like cattails are incredible, and I've never tried them, but there's so many parts to the cattails that you can eat, including the pollen, which is really interesting.
Really?
So you can harvest the pollen, which is a yellowish color, and put it in flour to make pancakes, for example. You can also have the shoots and the roots, the rhizomes. Alan described them as water chestnut type of a texture. So really delicious. A lot of fun ways to cook that. You can also look for things like watercress, which is an invasive species here, but pretty common in water areas. Mint, berries. So lots of options around the lake's edges and around water's edges.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So was there anything else that stood out to you or surprised you as you were working on this one?
It's funny that you asked the food writer to do this story and not an outdoors person, because I've spent very little time in my life fishing and a lot more time going to restaurants.
Eating fish.
Yeah. So, when I think about what comes up when you're fishing on a lake in Minnesota, obviously I'm thinking about fish. I'm not really looking kind of at all the other parts of this ecosystem and what's edible. And so it was just really cool and surprising to me to learn about what an abundance of food there is that's not just fish that Minnesota's lakes provide, and of course have for many generations, and for many communities, indigenous communities especially, that have relied on the things that grow there for food. And the folks I spoke to talked about the lakes being just a Shangri-La of food during the growing season, and just what a gift they are to all of us.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that. And I feel like this cattail situation sounds really intriguing. I'm going to add that to my list to try this year. And I grew up going ricing with my dad, and I've been foraging for morels and got some poison ivy, but it was worth it. I feel like, have you done some foraging since moving to Minnesota?
I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for this at the Strib Unbound here, but
It's all right. It's all right.
Not really. No,
Yeah.
I did one time. I went to the Boundary Waters. We had a guide, and we ate blueberries off the bush, and it was really incredible. But no, I'm guilty of not having done enough foraging. But maybe I got to start. You know?
I think eating wild blueberries in the Boundary Waters sounds like pretty amazing.
Iconic.
And yeah. We'll definitely let that count. Well, thank you so much, Sharyn. I learned a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks so much to Nathan, who was curious about the weeds growing in Minnesota lakes. You can read all of our Curious Minnesota stories online at startribune.com. And I'm hoping this inspired you to send me a question. Send me an email and let me know what you're curious about at curious@startribune.com. And now, as I always like to say, stay curious. Thank you.